Natasha Joubert was born on the 23rd of July 1997 to an Afrikaans-speaking South African family of European descent. She is the youngest of 3 children and has an older brother and sister. Natasha grew up in a loving household where both of her parents were extremely loving and supportive, but by no means did she grow up rich. From an early age, Natasha showed interest in pageantry, winning her first title in what I can only assume is some sort of creche pageant. Too adorable. In 2009 alone, at the age of 11 or 12, Natasha competed in 3 competitions that we know of, winning Junior Miss $1 Million, Mejuffrouw or Miss Montana Junior, Montana being the primary school she attended in Pretoria, where she grew up, and not the States in the USA, and placing 3rd at Miss Spring Fairy 2009. A very packed schedule for an 11-year-old, I must say so myself. Her pageant ambitions did not slow down in 2010 either. Natasha took part in some of the now infamous Keaoleboga's kiddie pageants. We need to talk about how Carolyn is actually using Natasha and Bryoni's Miss SA accolades as an ad for one of her own pageants. Like, woman, just stop. During 2010, Natasha placed as first princess or first runner-up in the Queen of the Universe pageant, building up that experience, and she's barely 13 at that point. Oh my goodness. Unfortunately, this would also be a pivotal year for Natasha in other ways, as her father had lost his job and the family really started to struggle more financially. We know from what Natasha has said in her pageant career, especially at Miss South Africa, that this was a huge, impact on her family. In 2011, Natasha started attending high school at Hoërskool Eldorraine. Even though her father was still unemployed, Natasha could still compete in pageants because they already lived in Pretoria, where a lot of things just happen in South Africa, and her mother was actually the one making all of her outfits. This was also the first time that Natasha expressed public interest in Miss South Africa, posting on Facebook, "If I want to hear my name at one place, it is Miss South Africa." Too adorable. Natasha won Miss Junior Teen South Africa 2011, and the family's financial struggles were again brought to light when Natasha's mother, Nande Joubert, posted to Facebook asking for help to send Natasha to Turkey for Teen Miss World. I don't think she ever ended up going, and also Carolyn was in charge of Junior Teen Miss South Africa, so why didn't she send Natasha? That woman really just gets on my nerves. In 2012, Natasha's pageant ambitions continued, winning Miss Teen Rainbow Nation and also meeting Melinda Bum, who was Miss South Africa at the time. Iconic. 2013 was another pivotal year in Natasha's life. Unfortunately, her father passed away on his 49th birthday. He had been unemployed for 3 years at this point, but had actually gone for an interview about a month before his death, and they actually found out that he got the job while he was in an induced coma just before he passed away. Shortly after her father's passing, a now 16-year-old Natasha reiterated that yes, she wanted to be Miss South Africa one day. This all makes the fact that she won Miss South Africa almost exactly 10 years later so much more poignant. 2014 was an exciting year in South Africa, pageant-wise. Of course, Rolene Strauss had won South Africa's 3rd Miss World title, and Natasha was sure to make Rolene her cover photo on Facebook, as one does. As for Natasha, not only did she win her own high school's pageant, being crowned Miss Eldorraine 2014, but she also won Miss Teen $1 Million. Natasha and Demi seemed to get along great and remained in touch throughout the years. Natasha wasn't only a pageant girly, she can actually sing. She was in the first team for hockey at her school, and she was a prefect as well. I'll keep saying it, she is and always will be a full package queen. Natasha won Miss Northern Gauteng this year, with Tarina Botha of Miss Universe Thailand and Miss South Africa fame having been her predecessor. Speaking of predecessors, Natasha also handed over her high school pageant title, but that's not all. 2015 was a very busy year for Natasha, and she also won both Miss Teen Galaxy South Africa as well as Miss Teen Queen of South Africa. Keep in mind that this was also during her matric year, her last year of high school. In contrast, I didn't want any distractions during my matric year, okay? So I was sure to dump my boyfriend of 2 years in January of my matric year. Speaking of boyfriends, 2015 is also the year that Natasha allegedly started dating her now fiancé and partner of 8 years, Enrico Vermaak. His surname actually directly translates to entertain, and I would have personally entertained no man during my matric year, no matter how blue his eyes are. Why are his eyes so blue? It's like looking at a husky. 2016 rolls around and you wouldn't believe it, Natasha is still obsessed with all things Miss South Africa, our consistent queen. In 2016, Natasha competed in pageants as per usual, but her biggest achievement of 2016 was representing South Africa at Miss Globe. There she managed to win best in swimsuit and placed in the top 5. Other than that, Natasha also competed at Miss Kansa, Miss Jacaranda City, Miss Rivonia, Miss United Continent South Africa, and SA Top Model. 2017 was more chill for Natasha. She met Ntando Kunene, who was Miss South Africa at the time. She judged a few high school pageants, and Natasha's friend Demi won Miss South Africa 2017 and then went on to win the Miss Universe pageant, which was huge for South Africa. Natasha attended Miss South Africa 2019. Zozibini Tunzi won Miss South Africa and also ended up going to Miss Universe and winning. In 2020, Natasha graduates university, but after 3 relatively chill years for Natasha, she finally entered Miss South Africa in 2020. Everyone was super excited for her. Natasha competed at Miss South Africa during the pandemic, so there was no crowd, but managed to place as the second runner-up anyway. Tato Mosehle was the first runner-up and Shudufatu Musida was crowned Miss South Africa 2020. It was decided that Shudufatu would represent South Africa at Miss World, whilst the first runner-up, Tatu, would represent South Africa at Miss Supranational, which was the Miss South Africa organization, as newly required license that they just basically gotten that year. Which now leaves Natasha with the role of South Africa's representative at Miss Universe. The Miss South Africa organization were very supportive of Natasha, and a big event even was held to celebrate Natasha and to show off her national costume for Miss Universe prior to her leaving. Her national costume was designed by the same man who designed this year's final gowns and who was also a final judge on Crown Chasers, renowned South African designer Gertjohan Kutsie. However, many people noticed that Shudufatu and Tatu did not get the same fanfare when they departed for their respective competitions, perhaps since Natasha was the girl going for the back-to-back, and the organization had a lot of faith in her. Everybody was very excited for her. Miss Universe 2020 actually took place in May of 2021. Eventually, Natasha would be the first of Miss South Africa 2020's triplets to represent South Africa internationally, even sporting a similar style jumpsuit as her very successful predecessor Zozibini Tunzi had worn upon her departure for Miss Universe back in 2019. Natasha was a clear fan favorite, and if I remember correctly, Wagner Wessel stated in one of his live streams on Instagram that if this wasn't the year for a South African back-to-back, then he really didn't know. She dazzled everyone during the preliminary competition, sporting an amazingly iconic gown and even starting a glove trained in pageantry. The gown was by Julius Shea Couture. It was amazing. So imagine everyone's surprise when Natasha would eventually go unplaced at Miss Universe finals, meaning that she didn't make the top 21 and wasn't allowed on stage. Despite the fact that at the time I felt Natasha had issues with projecting authenticity in her voice, I too was actually shocked that she didn't at least get to step foot on the final stage. This was a humiliating blow for Natasha, and in a live afterwards, her emotion was evident. The Miss South Africa organization had built her up 1,000 feet high in the months before Miss Universe, only for a few Miss Universe judges to knock her all the way down again. The gown she was supposed to wear at Miss Universe was later revealed in pictures on social media. Natasha had no choice but to move on with her life, even though the months after coming back to South Africa was difficult for her. She attended Miss South Africa 2021 and also a Gertjan Coetzee event. He is the man who created her Miss Universe national costume, if you remember. In 2022, long after her time with Miss South Africa ended, Natasha is still promoting Miss South Africa sponsors and even picking up some sponsorships of her own in the form of ACES. 2023 rolls around and feeling thoroughly sentimental, Natasha decided to give Miss South Africa another go. Many were perplexed by this decision as both Miss Universe and Miss World was now off the table for her. She had already gone to Miss Universe and Miss Universe rules state that no woman is allowed to go twice, and Miss South Africa had let go of the Miss World license. She could go to Miss Supranational, but she's never expressed interest in Miss Supranational before. I assume that she just wanted to go, be Miss South Africa, wanted to have the Miss South Africa title. Although with the new Miss Universe owners' preferences for winners only at Miss Universe, many wondered how wise it would be for Natasha to be crowned Miss South Africa. This year, Miss South Africa was going all out with a new reality show in which one contestant would be eliminated each week. There were challenges, photo shoots, and most importantly, it allowed us the opportunity to get to know the women vying for the Miss South Africa crown. From the start, Natasha handled each and every challenge like a boss. In my view, Natasha was the most well-rounded contestant of all this year. So when it came to finals, it was no surprise that Natasha went from top 7 to 5 to 3 and finally top 2 alongside Bryoni Govender, who's also a return queen. Natasha was announced as Miss South Africa 2023, but since she cannot represent South Africa again at Miss Universe, Bryoni has been awarded that privilege. As for Miss Supranational, we know that Natasha will not compete there either, so perhaps that duty will fall to Nande Mabala, who was the second runner-up. But yes, guys, that was all about Natasha's journey from, basically birth until Miss South Africa 2023. Of course, there were many, probably countless titles. The girl has been competing, since forever. So yeah, Miss South Africa this year is someone who will not be representing us internationally. That feels weird to say because I feel like for the past years, I don't even know how long, we've all been so focused on Miss Universe, Miss World, whatever. I mean, I'm still focused on Miss Universe, don't get me wrong, Miss Supranational also. But let me know whether or not you find it refreshing that Natasha will not be going anywhere internationally and that she will just be for us. We get to keep her all to ourselves. Let me know what you think. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe and I will see you in the next one. Bye.